All right, let's open this up. Case file 400, The Descent. What we're looking at here is, well, it's a deep dive into a really profound, kind of unsettling psychological journey. We're talking about a descent right into the shadows to uncover a truth that, let's be honest, the waking world tries its best to keep buried.
So where does our case kick off? It starts with the arrival of this mysterious figure. The files call him the Uncanny Wanderer, sometimes the truth-telling monster. And let's be clear, this is no hero. Think of him more as a catalyst, a jagged shadow that shows up and just shatters all those comfortable illusions. His arrival? It's the signal that a massive, radical transformation is about to begin.
Okay, so before this whole descent kicks off, where do we find our subject? They're living right here in what the files call the City of Glass Masks. You know the place. It's a world built on polite scripts, right? On carefully crafted personas and those perfect workplace smiles. Everyone's performing, playing a role for some invisible audience, always looking up, searching for approval from these silent judges in the stars.
And this right here is the central conflict of the whole case file. See, the normal path, the one we're all told to follow, is the hero's ascent. Climb that ladder, chase that shining summit of social approval. But this file, it documents the complete opposite. It's called the inverted journey, and it's a deliberate descent, a journey through what society calls failure. It's about turning your back on the stars to go digging for something real in the dark soil.
Which brings us to the inciting incident. Because this inverted journey, it doesn't usually start by choice. Nope, it's triggered. It's triggered by the arrival of that jagged shadow we talked about, the truth-telling monster. His very presence is enough to just shatter the whole comfortable, predictable routine of the everyday world.
So where does this descent actually happen? The files call it the Uncanny Forest, but don't go looking for it on a map. You won't find it. This is a psychic space, a kind of threshold where the world you know suddenly feels off, just strange enough to be really deeply unsettling. And it's in this place that all that social armor we wear, it just starts to rust and crumble away.
Yeah, because in the primal honesty of this forest, there's nobody to perform for anymore. All those masks we wear every single day, they get dropped. The polite scripts, those perfectly curated online personas, the whole uniform of convention, poof, it all just dissolves. And the traveler's left totally exposed, facing a reality that is terrifyingly raw.
So the big question is, how do you even navigate a place like this? A psychic wilderness? Well, the case file points to a very specific and, honestly, a pretty strange method. We've got to dig into the tools that are actually used to map out this descent.
And it turns out we have a guide. Our guide through this forest is a classic archetype, the Holy Fool. You might know him as the Jester. This character has this surplus of honesty. So much of it that the conventional world just can't stand it. He doesn't preach the truth, see? He embodies it in a way that just forces you into a confrontation.
And this slide, it perfectly illustrates the fool's technique. The file calls it the geometry of the grotesque. I love that. Instead of a head-on attack, he uses things like dark humor, satire, and just the plain absurd. It's like a different wavelength of truth, one that can actually bend around our defenses and sneak right past the guards our ego puts up.
And the crucial point here is why this is so necessary. I mean, think about it. As the file says, direct, unvarnished truth, it usually just makes us put our shields up, right? The light just bounces right off our armor. But the grotesque, now that can wiggle its way into the darkest, most complicated corners of our minds, places that a direct confrontation could never, ever touch.
So if you follow the Fool, he leads the traveler deeper and deeper, right toward the heart of the forest. And this is where we hit the climax of our case, a confrontation that is going to change absolutely everything.
But this question, it forces us to throw out all the old stories. Because this isn't about slaying a monster to get some prize at the end. The file reframes this whole thing. It's not a battle. It's a meeting with a totally essential and frankly terrifying part of the journey itself.
This is when the traveler comes face to face with the verdant dragon. And this thing, it's not some external monster. It's the physical manifestation of absolute negation. The files call it the not-self flesh. Basically, it's the living, breathing embodiment of every single lie the traveler has ever told themselves. Every convenient little untruth they've clung to for comfort.
And this dragon, it doesn't breathe literal fire. What it breathes is something the files call ignoble knowledge. And what is that?
It's that agonizing, clarifying fire you feel when you finally see, with perfect, brutal clarity, all the fundamental truths you've known deep down your whole life, but you've actively chosen to ignore just to stay comfortable.
The files have a name for this experience. They call it 10,000 Hells. It's the self-inflicted torment of finally having to face your own internal rot, with no shields and no excuses left. It's a fire that just incinerates every comforting illusion, leaving behind only what is real.
Okay, so surviving that inferno, that's the turning point. In what we'd call the falling action of the story, our subject doesn't just heal or recover. No, they integrate this terrible, awful knowledge and use it to forge a brand new, unshakable foundation for who they are.
And this slide really shows you the profound shift in perspective that happens. That old celestial longing, always looking up to the stars, hoping for approval from some silent judge, that gets completely replaced by terrestrial mastery. The gaze isn't up anymore, it's down to the dark soil to find real power in the grit and the iron of existence.
And out of this, a whole new philosophy is born. It's all about finding your gravity in reality, not trying to escape it. It's about recognizing that the heavens are empty and silent because they're waiting for people who have mastered the ground. It's a complete and total rejection of all those hollow promises of comfort in some far-off deferred life.
This quote from the file just nails the transformation perfectly. The subject is no longer a beggar pleading with the sky. They've become a sovereign, a ruler whose kingdom is this difficult, beautiful, totally raw earth right beneath their own feet.
All right, let's turn to the final entry in the file. Let's see how all of this builds to a really startling resolution, a complete remaking of the self.
And the final transformation is absolute. That old self, the one who was always looking outside for validation, it's just gone, completely burned away.
All those tools of social performance, those glass masks worn for that invisible audience, they aren't just taken off. They are shattered beyond repair. There's simply no going back.
So what's left? What remains after all that? The case file describes this final state as a self-propelled wheel of pure becoming. Think about that. You're no longer an actor reading lines from someone else's script. You're a creator, the master of your own destiny, and you're in constant forward motion.
And so we close the file with this one last provocative thought. This whole inverted journey through the uncanny forest, the confrontation with the dragon, embracing the soil, it wasn't about destruction. Not really. It was about the necessary chaos you need to forge something new, something that shines on its own terms. It was about giving birth to a dancing star right from the heart of the abyss. Case closed.